What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another Detroit Lions draft video. Today, we are now into we are back returning to our series where we take a look at each of the Detroit Lions draft picks in the 2022 draft and break them down individually. Today, we are into round one of this year's draft. We're talking about a trade that went down during the draft. I did not expect this at all, but it happened and may have landed the Lions one of the better weapons, if not the best weapon in this year's class. So let's get it started.
The Minnesota Vikings have traded the 12th pick to the Detroit Lions with the 12th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. The Detroit Lions select Jameson Williams.
Yes! We got it done! Welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here. We're back with another draft video, man. It is good to be back with another one of these videos. We may change it up a little bit today. I don't know exactly how the presentation is going to look, so I just want to throw that out there. Could be the same as our past ones. Could be a little bit different. We'll see how I decide to do that. However, today we're into round number one. We have two players left to take a look at. And as you guys saw from the intro, we're taking a look at pick number 12 in this year's draft. This was not originally the Detroit Lions pick because the Rams won a Super Bowl, so it was pick number 32. However, this was a trade up by the Lions with the Minnesota Vikings, which, we'll see how these players turn out because that's really all it comes down to is, how did the picks turn out? But in terms of just the value of the picks alone, by usually how you look at the value, seems like the Lions pulled off a pretty good deal here by trading up from 32 to number 12 with the Minnesota Vikings, also giving up pick number 34, but in return, receiving pick number 46 and also giving up pick number 66. So basically, they moved back in the second round and gave up a third round pick to move up 20 spots in the first round, okay? Now, that doesn't normally happen. I wasn't expecting this to be the pick. Even when we traded up, you're standing there, I'm like, what the heck are we doing? I was just hoping, oh, please don't be a quarterback here. But what are we doing? Is it Kyle Hamilton? Are the Lions really going to grab a safety? Are they going to do this? Like, what's going on with this pick? The last thing on my mind was Jameson Williams. We rarely talked about the player because there was just that expectation that, yeah, that kind of guy is going to be out of our range. It may be a high receiver. I was thinking maybe 32, 34. But, that Jameson Williams, he's out of our range. Well, don't tell Brad Holmes that. He traded up to number 12. He took the receiver out of Alabama, coming off of an ACL tear, but also one of the most productive seasons in college football last year. A speedster that should bring, as we always say, a new element to this team. Before we get into the production in the film, let's first do a quick little background on Jameson Williams. So this was a 4-star wide receiver recruit coming out of high school that, man, his numbers were insane. Okay, by the way, I saw his huddle, his highlight tape from his junior season, I believe it was. The guy had like 36 receptions for over 1,000 yards. Like, how weird 36 for 1,000, and he had like 15 touchdowns. You're telling me basically every other catcher scoring a touchdown. Like, that's unreal. Returns some punts. He had 7 returns for like 200 some yards. It was just incredible. I mean, the amount of yardage that he was racking up was insane. But a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, I read that he was ranked number 24 in terms of receivers that ultimately committed to Ohio State. Now, we've all seen this, right? He had very little production in Ohio State. Then he goes to Alabama. So what happened there? Well, apparently Ohio State and Alabama for him when making that committing decision was a very tough decision for him to make. He went back and forth on whether or not he should go to Ohio State or he should go to Alabama. Ultimately, he chose to go to Ohio State. But as we know, he really didn't get much production there. And it was, in his words, he didn't really know what his role was within that offense. Now, I do want to make it clear, okay? We have seen guys, go to big schools. Maybe they don't play there. They go elsewhere. They have success. I mean, I don't know. Joe Burrow did it, right? He was also at Ohio State, went to LSU, had a great year, and bam, first pick in the draft. He's behind guys like Garrett Wilson, who that same, offseason, I guess, was a 5-star recruit by Ohio State. You have Chris Olave in the building. Jackson Smith and Jigba is kind of working his way up there. And then more recently, you got guys like the Harrison Juniors that are kind of working their way into a role. So for him, the role was always not really understood what it was going to be for Jameson Williams. I thought it was interesting when you read like some of the, decisions to transfer and some of the, posts out there by Ohio State fans. There was no like negativity towards it. It was more like, man, Ohio State, their wide receiver group should be fine, but we may be looking back on this like, wow, we let one go there. 2 seasons that he was there in 2019, he posted 6 receptions for 112 yards and a touchdown. And in 2020, he had 9 receptions for 154 yards and 2 touchdowns. He just wasn't getting targets within that offense. So he decided to transfer out, head to Alabama, who he said was kind of like his number 2 choice. So he decides to go to Alabama. And for Alabama, it was a different situation because their receiver group just lost a couple pieces, 2 top 10 picks in the previous draft in Jalen Waddle and also Devontae Smith. So they had an opening at the receiver position. He comes in immediately. Nick Saban's talked about, look, he's got a big role potential here. No matter really how you look at this, especially when you consider the fact that it's SEC, it's his first year there. And, you know, some of the timing wasn't always perfect, and that's probably because of that. But when you just look at the numbers, like, wow, the guy in 15 games posted 79 receptions, almost 1,600 yards receiving, 15 touchdowns. He also ran the ball a few times. He also had a couple of kick returns go for touchdowns. He also did that, like we said, back in high school. His stats, compared to really anybody, are incredible. And then you get into the advanced stats, like the fact that he had 11 touchdowns over 30-plus yards. I mean, you can see that at a small school where, this guy's just dominating. And like when he played New Mexico, it was like they couldn't keep up with him. It just looked like it was a different level, which makes sense. But to think that he's doing this against the Georgias, the Arkansas, the Floridas, there's also the stat that 37 catches of 10-plus yards that he had at least a step of separation, again, according to Pro Football Focus there. So once you start digging into the advanced stats, then it's like, man, the ability to take the top off is a huge part of his game. Then you also look at the rack stats, the fact that he averaged 9.3 yards after the catch, which was 4th in college football last season. That's a huge stat, and I don't want that to be overlooked with all the deep passing stats, because of course that's part of it when you catch and run for 20-plus yards. But then also what he could do underneath, 9.3 yards after the catch, which was 4th in college football. He forced, according to PFF, 12 missed tackles, which was 50th, counted for 6 drops on the season. So the numbers were great. Then when you take a look at the build of Jameson Williams, unfortunately, we don't have the scores, the testing scores, the speed scores, things like that, even if you would have done it, because of the fact that he had the ACL tear. Unfortunately, that came in the national championship game where he had 4 receptions in that game. He was running with the ball, and it looked like he tried to plant his left foot, and he tore his ACL. But immediately, doctors were very confident about his recovery. We've seen videos of him moving around, and they said, look, after he gets his surgery, this was immediately after the injury, after he gets his surgery, man, within 10 days, he's going to be back to that same playing speed, the same sub 4.3 playing speed. Now, we don't have the official time again because he didn't run at the combine, but we can just tell by looking at the film the guy's pretty darn fast, okay? I don't care what his 40 time is, be honest with you. It's a cool thing to know, I guess, but the play speed is what matters, and his play speed is ridiculous. So, you know, that's all that really matters to me. Read about the doctors being confident in his recoveries, and hey, basically, man, he's going to be ready to go as soon as teams are going to allow him to go. You know, doctors felt like he would be ready by training camp, and that his goal was to be ready by training camp. You know, some general managers thought it'd be during the season. So we'll have to wait and see. I'm not going to go super deep into that because today we're here to just talk about this player and what he brings to the table for the Lions. He listed it at 6'1.5", weighing 179 pounds. I think that could be added on a little bit, but it's more than like a Devontae Smith who came out at 166. He also listed at 32-inch arms, which are pretty long, 9.3 inch hands. Again, we don't have anything beyond that, though, because of the ACL injury that he had. Me, personally, I'm not too worried about the fact that, you know, he didn't really produce at Ohio State, because like you said, guys like Joe Burrow, you know, he didn't produce at Ohio State. He was a backup, goes to LSU, starts and goes crazy. The fact is he produced against SEC competition, which is what matters. He produced at extremely high level. We saw the impact when he went down. Same thing with John Mechie in that game, and they really just struggled offensively once those two guys went down. So I'm not too concerned about, you know, he didn't play a ton at Ohio State, because sometimes that's just how it works out. You know, and you utilize that transfer portal, you get your opportunity. I mean, that's what it's about, right? Especially at those levels, I feel like it's just getting your opportunity. And some teams don't give you that opportunity for whatever reason. You don't get that opportunity. With Alabama, he did. Right place, I would say right time. It's different, you know, than these guys. He's, you know, all these receivers are different styles. But when you just look at the last first-round receivers to come out of Alabama, going back to 2011, all of their first-round receivers drafted, it's a pretty good list of players that have been drafted at the receiver position. You go back to most recently, Jalen Waddle last season, who had over 100 receptions, over 1,000 yards. He got picked at number 6 by the Dolphins. You go to Devontae Smith, who had over 900 yards. He was the Heisman winner. You go to Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Kelvin Ridley, Amari Cooper, and some dude named Julio Jones going back to 2011. So those are the first-round receivers that have been taking at Alabama since 2011. Let's just say they've done a pretty good job. You know, for the most part, you know, it doesn't always work out perfectly. For the most part, you're getting usually a very productive receiver in the NFL. Kind of start off, break down receiver, then we'll get into the role I feel like he fits within this offense as we break it down. Let's start off with the release. This is a very important part, getting off the line of scrimmage, winning early in the release, and different guys are effective in different ways off the release. I think the Lions will use them. Again, you talk about role here, and where I thought Alabama liked to use them a lot was a lot of stack situations, a lot of bunches offensively where, yeah, you could either put him up on the line or you could put him off the line. It makes it much more difficult to press because, of course, you have that cluster of receivers. So, of course, man coverage is tough to defend, especially if you're trying to press because of all the rub routes you can run. Also, I think in a way, it has to give you somewhat more of a two-way go, which puts a little bit more pressure on that cornerback, even as the top guy, because when on the outside, the sideline, they can use to their advantage. In this situation, they have to cover the entire field not knowing your route. Those type of situations that you would put him in I thought was one of his biggest strengths. And we actually saw the Lions do this a lot last season. So if they do carry that part over from last year, we heard Dan Campbell say it was going to be like we saw the offense second half of the season, which was a lot of those, option routes, two-man routes, stack situations, right? The high-low reads, things like that. He did it a lot with Alabama, and I thought this was an area where he was really good because if you put him up on the line, a lot of times he could just run your defender off if that's what you were asking him to do because of his burst and his speed, his ability to win with one step and go. Example of a speed release here is he's working against this Auburn cornerback. Watch him come to balance and then just immediately go into this burst of field, create a lot of separation, the quick win, and make a play deep down the field. And really threaten defenses that way. Or if he plays behind someone else, ability to sit down in zone coverage, force defensive backs to kind of give him a little bit of cushion, make plays underneath. So that's an area where I thought he was very impactful, and Alabama liked to use him a lot. We also saw the LA Rams do this a lot last season, and Ben Johnson said he watched some of what the LA Rams did. And you can eliminate, in times, depending on the situation, you can eliminate some of that jam directly off the line of scrimmage, depending on what you're looking for. If he's a primary target, if he's somebody just running someone off. Things he uses well, and this shows up throughout his entire route tree, is his eyes and his shoulders, his body movement. He is incredible here throughout his entire route. And we're going to take a look at some clips to just open up things. But off the release, it's a huge part of his game. And I think one of the areas that he has a lot of success, specifically against press coverage, whether that's soft press or press coverage, is with the hesitation off the line of scrimmage. Here, Jameson is facing a soft press on the bottom of the screen here. And you're going to see how he kind of works his way up to close that space with the cornerback, then reset the release point. He's going to stab with that outside foot to get himself face up with the cornerback, and then use that overhand swim move to beat him inside. It's a nice little release example. Using kind of that body movement shake. This is something that I think Doug Baldwin, you go back a little bit, he did this extremely well off the line. Maybe not the fastest guy, but really good off the line at using kind of that upper body, and he does this down the field as well. But off the release, that's a very, very big part for his game to get those immediate wins at times. He is against Florida. Watch how he wins this without even taking a jab or a stab here. He's just going to come to balance, kind of show the upper body shake, get the cornerback Elam leaning, and then take off. Now, I would like to see his hands be a little bit quicker there, but still. Understanding of the situation was really good off the release. I mean, he could pick it up kind of immediately based on how the cornerback would play him post-snap. So if a cornerback, was showing maybe some man coverage off the line of scrimmage into some sort of skip or hop release, cornerback opens up, it's instant, okay, I'm attacking the coverage this way. We'll get to that more in terms of route running. We do see some variety there in terms of ways to win off the line of scrimmage with his release. And again, understanding where the route needs to go and being able to vary his releases based on that. I think he could improve in a few areas here. I think he needs to utilize his hands better. The line of scrimmage, I think he'd be much more proactive, utilizing his hands, syncing that up with his release to create that separation. Now, I do believe more reps against press jam coverage will probably help him utilize his hands and sync it more with his feet, because again, you love that, kind of just shoulder shake when he comes to balance. And here he is with a double press release with his feet, and maybe you get a swipe down there and you create a little bit more separation, but I think just more reps will probably help him in this department. And now he's much more reactive, where some of those, stabs in his chest off the line of scrimmage can really throw off the timing of his route, and not being proactive, having his hands ready to kind of fight that off and create a little bit of space off the line of scrimmage, which can throw him off in some of those press situations, which can throw off the timing of routes and ability to create that separation that you need. Because right now he wins a lot with his upper body movement. He wins with his quickness, his burst off the line, but I think he could utilize his hands much better. Also, when you watch him off the release, he's a little bit more lankier, like a little bit more, I wouldn't say straight up, like linear off the release. Some of his jabs and some of his stems get a little bit condensed and they don't sell as much as you would like them to. Trying to go to some sort of double release off the line of scrimmage, you really don't always get that kind of sell in that first stab or first jab off the line. This may be more of the stem and the route running portion here, but this seems like one of those examples where you kind of just want to really get that handoff. Elam plays this well, and he was testing him like this. McCreary played some press as well, but it's a lot of speed releases. We got to get that handoff, that way you can really sell that and get back to the ball without being held up. It becomes a little bit more condensed, I would say, and that's why a lot of the quicker releases, I think, suit him really well. Or if it's a hesitation release where he kind of paused, maybe he shows block, whatever it is, and then he takes off and he wins with that burst off the line of scrimmage. So I think there's areas he can improve here. One area as a whole, which we'll probably hit on with route running as well, is play strength. I think he could be a little bit better here to try to handle some of those where he does get, punched off the line, or he's in the slot and a linebacker comes over and kind of gives him a push where it doesn't completely throw off some of the route timing, because when that happens, he's trying to catch up, you could tell, in terms of route timing, and it throws off his route, and then it kind of throws off the whole design of the play. So I think play strength will be something that you would like to see added in the upper body, and it comes out and it shows up in route running as well. Long arms, it just probably needs a little bit of work to be more consistent right now as that possession guy that he's always going to win in the first 5 yards or something like that. So maybe that's more of the DJ Chark immediately for the Lions. His route running does so much well, and we're going to talk about how you could dictate coverage and what you can come into and what you can throw at him because of what he could do potentially offensively and how he could put guys in tough situations. There's so much to like here, I think, as a route runner as a whole. Some slight knocks here, but there's so much to like. One thing being that I really don't think you want to play off-man coverage on this guy, or you want to play especially like a squat defender where he's more in a catching situation, and that could be in a blitz situation. For example, you saw LSU do this because LSU did a lot of interior blitzing with their linebackers, and they played man coverage like zero defensively, and you can see that kind of when they all align evenly. You're like, okay, this is probably zero coverage. They're backed up like 7 yards, and they're all aligned evenly. This is probably zero coverage. But like those situations, I don't think you want to see this guy because of his ability to win underneath. He is so dominant with any type of speed route, like a speed out, a crosser, right? If he has a free release off the line that he can work into a speed route, for a cornerback that's on an island specifically because he has no safety over top, so he has to continue to get depth, and it opens up speed routes just so effortlessly to him. But at the same time, playing that off-man coverage is a threat that he can go over top. So here LSU is going to bring a cornerback blitz, and you can see by the cornerback that's up against Jameson at the bottom of the screen, he's playing inside leverage, usually indicates some sort of man. I like how he pushes the inside here towards the hashes and then works back outside to open up this speed route. And on top of that, the awareness that he's chasing, so to get back upfield and pick up some yards. It's a very dangerous game to play with this guy. Now, this is kind of a tough situation that they're blitzing. You don't have enough guys to pick up here, so to try to hit a double move is very difficult, but it kind of gives you the idea of a squat defender sitting in this catching, right? They're going to jump on the first break, and his stop and start double move is just nasty. I mean, the amount of separation, he's like 20 yards on this guy. So you put him in those spots, I think he's going to be very effective consistently. With that being said, so much to like here. Let's just kind of, go into it. Maybe out of order, I don't know. Anyways, first off, zone timing, just route timing in general, okay? His route timing, I thought, was outstanding for Alabama, especially when you consider that he just was there for a season. I thought the route timing they had. Now, I think sometimes it was thrown off. We talked about it off the release, how it can be thrown off. I think play strength also plays into this. But for the most part, his understanding of the timing of a route and attacking zone coverage, and this is where I talk about post-snap, where I think you see the ability to understand what the defense is going into, what are they shifting into, what are they doing against me, okay, this is man, oh, this is zone, okay, and then changing the pace of his route. One thing that's super important is you can be fast, but you can't just be fast, right? It's all about the pacing of a route. He's probably not going to be the fastest receiver in the NFL. He may be up there, maybe not the fastest though. What makes him so electric and so problematic is his route pacing is ridiculous. His stop and start is unseen, like it's incredible. With that being said, his ability to attack a zone, sit down in a zone, make himself a target for the quarterback, really dial back his speed, versus at the same time, if he needs to run someone off, just jumping off the line and going, turning into a complete burst, sprinting acceleration to get up to top speed, extremely fast, and put a lot of pressure on the defense. I think you saw it here against Cincinnati, where they run this corner route, put him in a slot, they haven't run a corner route, and the outside receiver here is going to run like, a little bit of a zig, I guess you could say, on the outside. And he's kind of pauses, hesitates off the line, and then just that burst where the outside cornerback, you see against the timing, it all has to sync up together. Timing is everything. You see this outside corner, he watches the underneath receiver go underneath, so he's like, all right, I can drop off. But he has no chance to recover once the outside receiver comes back outside because of Jameson putting on this incredible acceleration and just getting to the corner so fast. He pulls both the defenders with him. Even the New Mexico touchdown that he had, right, where he kind of pauses off the line, they go to the play fake, cornerback sits. But even then, he could have just took off and ran like, oh, I'm by the cornerback, I'm gone. He just pulls up, slows down and makes himself a target for the quarterback and then takes it into the house. Like that understanding on the fly of feeling coverage and feeling where it's at and reacting to that, being able to change my pace based on it, you know, let the receivers clear out the middle of the field so I can sit down over the middle and time this thing up. Make sure I'm not getting in the way, right? You can't get in the way of these guys because then you're throwing everything else off. That is a huge part of his game to me, and it makes him so tough against zone, especially again if you're playing off coverage, because to me, he's going to eat you up in zone coverage, like as simple as that. Now, we talk about how can he dictate coverage. In a lot of ways, he can dictate coverage, and I think just in ways of he comes in the game and you have to have a certain idea of what we can and what we can't do. There's a great example. He just puts this safety in such a really bad spot here. Now, again, we talk about what he does as an entirety in terms of the route. He runs the route so well. You know, it's every little nuance and savviness that he puts in there, which we're going to get into. But at the same time, it's this predicament that he puts you in, where we've already seen the Lions at OTAs running these dig routes with Josh Reynolds and the DJ Charks and whoever it may be from the outside coming in, because of this threat that he puts where the safety's now in a spot where, okay, I kind of have to decide, do I go over top? You better get over top here and help, because your cornerback's not going to be able to stick with him one-on-one. If you don't get over top and help, the ball should go there. If he does help over top, you have that dig route right underneath with the Reynolds and the Charks. I think the Lions are already working on things like that, right? And you want Chark and stuff. They want a chance to run with the ball. Well, there you go. That'll be your opportunity over the middle. So talking about dictate coverage, I think that's a great example of how we can dictate your coverage. Another elephant in the room here is his double moves are nasty. Like, in any way, they're just disgusting. And I think specifically you have to narrow it down into his stop and start ability. This is unreal how well he can stop and start, get up to speed, stop and start. It's unreal how well he does this. And again, he kind of just pauses mid-route. You see how fast he gets up to speed, and he just instantly dials it down and then shoots off and takes off again. It's like riding a roller coaster with this guy. And all he needs is that slight hesitation, that slight, pause, get up by the cornerback, and he doesn't have that acceleration or burst to recover and get back into the play with him. You've seen him do this so many times. Receiver will be open. Here at the bottom of the screen, Georgia's cornerback's playing outside leverage, so he's allowing this back inside, which means he's going to have safety up over top. So for Jameson, look at the stop and start to also hold this safety, get him to bite, and then go over top. He has to beat both guys on this play. Clips we'll have to show you here, but just the amount of savviness he runs to his routes. So we talk about the timing, all of these things. Well, the savviness that he runs with, and I think he can improve in certain areas, but again, especially when he's clean running through routes, is the savviness to hold defenders, hold a safety, using his head, using his body weight, showing kind of that, upper body movement, kind of that shift, and then cutting back inside, holding a safety, moving a cornerback, attacking a blind spot of a cornerback on the outside. All right, good and bad here for Jameson, but the route running is good. So you're going to see him at the top of the screen, up on the line of scrimmage. Watch him change the pace, but it's again understanding the zone by the two deep safeties here. He's going to force the free safety to continue to get depth because he starts to slow up his route at this point. It also makes the strong safety not immediately drop and get in a coverage position. Then when he turns the speed back on, now the strong safety's in trail position, the free safety's way off. Ball tracking a lot of times gets to knock here, but it's almost a bad situation decision here in terms of pass catching. He waits on this football at the high point on an underthrown pass instead of going back and working into the ball and going up and getting it. He lets the ball come to him, no chance. I love how he works himself open here. Watch the opposite side safety against his zone coverage. He's going to attack the middle of the field, and watch how at the very tail end here, he kind of forces the push upfield, backs the safety off for a second to open up a space to catch it underneath. It's a DJ Chark kind of route. Again, from the slot here, he's working against a cover two safety who's already on the outside, so he's really got to sell this inside, shoulders, eyes, and then flip it back outside and get a chance to make a play. Kind of thing makes him so darn dangerous, and he creates a lot of space, a lot of separation, again, especially against zone coverage, but he just has that feel for just giving everybody a little something, like, okay, let me just back off this linebacker, give him a little nudge, let me show my head upfield, go get him to pause or back up for a second. There you go, now I open up this underneath route. It's things like that where, man, he creates himself a big target for the quarterback, which I know the quarterback has to love. You can really get a sense for his ability to understand coverage and what he's getting by the quarterback making the adjustments to that receiver, then going to that receiver and him scoring a touchdown. And this happened in multiple games. Where can he improve? Again, this comes back to play strength, I think, in one way for me here. And I think this ties in with the fact that I think he could utilize his hands a little bit better. We talked about off the reliefs. I think downfield, he could utilize his hands a little bit better to be a little bit more subtle in terms of creating separation. Now, you see instances where he tries this, doesn't create much space. I think this is why you get a little bit stronger in the upper body, create a little bit more space, because you do see the awareness, okay, look, I'm attacking the inside, cornerback's on my outside. Let me kind of work into him and then bounce back outside, try to create some of that space. but he could utilize his arms a little bit of his arms a little bit. Obviously, without getting flagged. You don't want to be overly aggressive here, but coming out of cuts, coming out of breaks, maybe to gain a little bit of that subtle separation. You do see instances where, we go again to that linear, part of being a receiver, and you see him lumber just a tad. It's not bad, especially for a guy at his height. But you do see sometimes where coming in and out of breaks without lumbering down just a little bit, taking a couple of extra steps to really cut and break outside.
Let's beat the drums a few extra times working back to the football on routes like this, but it's really not that bad for a guy at his height. Then I love how he works back to the football. Also notice the route pacing is outstanding here as well, but it works perfectly fine from stack releases, things like that. Just man press situations, trying to really get that space. May not work because they have a chance to recover much easier when they're that tight in coverage. However, then you're talking about you're trusting a guy in tight coverage against him not to get beat over top, and at that point, do you want safety help? Now you're dictating coverage.
Because he's so fast, so explosive, and he's pretty linear, and he can struggle just a little bit with that. I think you see it when he comes to sitting down for routes. Sometimes you see a couple of extra steps in there. You like to see a little more decisive, where it's like, okay, sit down, get back to the ball. You see with like slot receivers that are shorter and they're closer to the ground, they can just kind of sit down and stop. Again, you do see a little bit more of that pause, when he's trying to kind of situate himself where he's really square to where the ball is coming from, instead of being like 1 foot in front of the other, kind of like halfway in front of the football.
He's going to get grabbed a lot, which should draw a lot of holding penalties, and it can start right off the release. It can limit some of his ability to break down, get back to the ball if they get that connection early, but that's where maybe you'd like to see just some sort of ability to create that separation at the top of the stem, at the top of the route coming out of the break, to just create a little bit of space when they try to get very physical. He seems to have no issue whatsoever working against cornerbacks that, aren't getting physical with him at the break point. And what you notice about both these plays, both times he's using the speed release. So he's putting a lot of pressure on these cornerbacks in man coverage. So they're in his trail position trying to grab to slow him down, but maybe just a little way to nudge himself off more consistently so he doesn't have to get the flag.
He's a fantastic route runner that probably could clean up some things.
We'll talk about finishing plays like this a little bit later in the video, but when you get these matchups, single high safety, press corner, and you can have a receiver that you can just trust to win that one-on-one, three-step drop, that's where the ball's going. If that's a check at the line, whatever it may be, that's a huge benefit. It's a big threat that every time you're taking defensively, anytime you put that kind of guy on an island because of his burst to just beat you in the first couple steps.
If you ask him, you put him in the right position to be successful, he's going to be very, very good route runner. It's going to get a lot of space immediately. Then you talk about the receiving side, okay? Catching the football. I mean, that's, we always say it's the most important part. Well, we know that he was eager to get on the jugs because he can't run, and at the same time, he also carries around a football everywhere he goes. I think that's good, kind of getting your hands used to the feeling of just the ball. It's a little bit bigger, it's kind of like throwing a brick around, as I said. At the same time, can you catch the football? I mean, that's what it's come down to. Well, in college, I think he catches the football pretty well. He has a few drops. We'll talk about why. But I think first thing that stands out is he does show pretty good consistent hand technique. I don't think that's why he drops the football. He doesn't, to me, drop the ball because his hand technique is all out of whack. I thought there was guys coming out of the draft and I was like, oh, that's ugly. Like, that's not good. His doesn't seem to be that way.
I'll show this for the route run, but also the little outside stab on this route versus some off-man coverage where he has outside leverage. This little outside jab pulls the cornerback off a little bit here from really diving down on this, and it looks like it makes Lewis Seen, who knows a very big hitter downhill, hesitate maybe just enough working downhill from breaking this up at the catch point.
Passes that are, kind of stomach, lower, where he has to scoop. You see a very clean hand technique to get his pinkies together, catch it with his fingers. I really noticed that. It's very important. You don't want to catch it with your palms. That's going to bounce off. But catching it with his fingers on some of those underneath passes, then having that ability to use the same form to scoop down, pick something off of the turf. He shows that good hand technique. And then you see the same thing when the ball is a little bit above his head. Dip his hands, get on top of it, make a play on the football. He has good flexibility at the catch point as well, and this has been shown off in multiple games. What do I mean by that? Just the ability to kind of change his body positioning and adjust to the football that's in the air, whether that's kind of making like a 90-degree turn, putting himself, eyes back on the quarterback where he's got his back turned to the end zone and he's catching the football. Just some of that flexibility to make plays, whether it's getting up in the air, again, scooping down, catching something that's a little outside. One little note I actually really liked about his game is I thought while the play was going on, I thought he did a really nice job of working his way back to the football. They're trying to work his way a little bit back to the football, right? If he runs some sort of hitch 5 yards, if the ball doesn't come, he may wait a second and then start to kind of work his way back into an open space for the quarterback underneath. As much like, okay, go up and get it. A lot of times because he just blew by guys. You didn't really see like go up and get it refs from, at least I didn't in the games that I watched. Seems to have pretty reliable hands because of the technique that he does play with. However, he does have a few concentration drops. And that's what I would probably put it in the category of, is more concentration than anything. Because when you watch him, like the drops that I saw was more of looking to make something happen before he completely had the football. Trying to kind of, catch it with your fingers, kind of pull it in. The rat guy, as soon as he catches that, he's looking to run. So sometimes doesn't even get the ball completely tucked in. Where he can improve as a pass catcher is probably some of that strength. I would say when you're working towards the catch point.
He will get grabbed through his route run, but at the catch point, as we know, things can get very physical. And there's plays like this where you want to see him play through that contact and make a play on the football. There's also this side of it as well when we talk about ball tracking. Maybe not so much finding the football as much as it is making the right decision on how to approach and attack the football in that situation, like the play we looked at earlier where he waited on the ball instead of attacking it. Here you want to see him kind of play through that coverage because, yeah, he may have been pulled down, but we know can get very physical on some of those shot plays. You want to see him be able to play through that and make a play on this football.
Especially down the field. Now, this is beyond just catching the ball. This is beyond the catch point, I should say. It's creating that space at the catch point, if that makes any sense. It kind of ties along with everything we just said. To kind of leverage yourself, put yourself in a position to really win that battle in terms of more of a 50-50 ball. The thing that you notice, and this is why going back to route running, I say, look, he needs to maybe get a little bit stronger, is because, and utilize his hands, because guys grab him a lot. And there is not enough flags for how many times people grab him, which is good. I mean, maybe we'll get a lot of flags in the NFL. That'd be outstanding. But the fact is, he is grabbed all the time coming out of cuts. So utilizing his hands a little bit more here to kind of, wash that away, get himself clean, having those more for proactive. Also having some of that play strength to really run through some of those, light grabs or when they kind of give you a tug. Just run through that, actually make that work against the defender. Where they try to grab, you pull through it, and now they're slowed down. They have no chance. It's going to not necessarily his ball tracking. I feel like it was almost more, from what I've seen, it seemed to be more like he's got a really good knack for catching the ball over his shoulder. He's done that a lot, especially on good passes, of course. He can definitely catch the ball over his shoulder. Maybe it's a little bit of inconsistent ball tracking downfield, but I also think some of it's inconsistent timing. It comes out a little bit late, and it's kind of inconsistent timing, which can lead to some inconsistent ball tracking down the field. As Ben John said, that's going to be the biggest challenge, is because we even saw some missed timing, I think, with him and Bryce Young, is that's going to be the biggest challenge, right? You're getting him back later. How fast can you get that timing down with a guy like Goff? Because, as we know, timing is everything, especially in this offense. Being where you're supposed to be when I need you to be, that way I can trust to throw it and anticipate that throw rather than having to see you there. Because if I have to do that, we're probably going to get sacked a lot. If I have to consistently do that, we're getting sacked a lot. So that can't be a thing. It's into probably, I always love this part of when I watch receivers. We said the same thing about James Mitchell. Run after catch or yards after catch, whatever it is. I think it's yak, but I say I don't know. Point is, making something happen with the ball in your hands. We hit the stat, 9.3 yards after the catch. And you could kind of attribute that to, well, it's just because he's, making all these deep plays. That's all it is. It's not really yards after catch. But the film says something different. The ability to make plays with the ball in his hands, because he's immediately looking to make something happen. I think this goes to the kickoff return background. Not saying on one return kickoffs would I be mad at it. I don't think so. I probably wouldn't do it because I think he's such a big part of this offense. Wouldn't want to risk the injury. But he would be explosive back there. Really good sense for running with the football, making a play as soon as the ball hits his hands. It can come on jet sweeps. That can come on screens, where it's that burst to get to 5-10 yards immediately. It's the fight for extra yards, where you just throw out kind of a weak arm tackle. He's running through that, man. He's not going down by that.
He's shifty, quick, and tough as a runner. Is very natural with the ball in his hands, as we said. Here, just look at this play, how he doesn't go out of bounds. He cuts back inside. Some running backs don't even do that. That upfield acceleration, though, is extremely noticeable, and this is where he can be really nice on screens because immediately it turns into a lot of yards.
And then I would also tie in field awareness. Great field awareness. And this comes on sidelines, when you're trying to toe tap. This comes to where the end zone is. Where's the back of the end zone? Where's the first down? Where do I need to get to with this ball? Stretching out to make sure I get across the pylon. Whatever it is, the field awareness is also pretty impressive from him as well. He does have a really nice feel of where he's at and where he needs to get to, or where he feels like he needs to get to. One way to sum up his blocking would be hit and miss. But with that said, I think I kind of have an idea of what he is as a blocker. But this probably should improve. A couple good things. First off, he definitely has willing effort. Like, you just talk about being a competitor. This guy's absolutely a competitor. He's competitive. The guy plays on special teams. All right, he's a gunner. I'm watching him play gunner against New Mexico. I'm like, what? Like, he's definitely a competitor. He will hit. We've seen that. And you'll see certain blocks where if a guy's not paying attention, right, if it's a safety, and he's coming down to just crack block, bam, just lights that guy up. See it after plays where he kind of gets into it with opponents. My favorite play has to be against LSU, the competitiveness here, right? So the cornerback comes down, makes a play on this underneath like slant route, breaks it up, and he's talking, he's getting his face talking. Very next play, seriously, very next play, he scores like a 70-yard touchdown. Just gone. And he's celebrating to the end. I'm just like, dude, he's that kind of competitor. He's very competitive on the field. And you see that, right? He's always frustrated when, he messes up, things like that. But with that being said, he shows willing effort to block, especially when the ball or the play is designed to go his direction. So if the run is going his way, or if the pass is like a screen and he's designed to block, he will show willingness to block. Like I said, if you're not paying attention, he will run you over. Like, that's just something you see. The issue is that a couple things here, again, maybe come back to strength a little bit, doesn't initiate a lot of power, because unless he's catching guys off guard, he's not running them over. Doesn't really show much, blocking connection and then running with them, which you don't see a lot from receivers anyway. But the ability to keep connection and then block a guy through a play doesn't really show up. So something you don't like is that he doesn't really block away from the ball. Like, the ball is designed to go away from him. There are instances where he doesn't block at all. He kind of just stands and watches. There's one against New Mexico where they were like the 6-yard line or something, and he didn't block. He just stood there. And what happened is Bryce Young, ended up going his direction. He didn't block his guy at all. He gets off, makes the play. So he's more of like he almost seems to be more of like a positional blocker, like when you go his direction, that shows competitiveness, but it doesn't show up when he's, kind of in some of those situations to drive block. And I think some of that could be doing with add a little bit more strength to it. That could potentially help. But even sometimes positional blocks, like, okay, let me just, wall him off this way. The ball breaks outside, he's got an easy tackle because he didn't really block through the play. So that's I don't think it's a lack of competitiveness. It's definitely, though, hit and miss as a blocker. How do I feel about Jameson Williams? What do I think his role is going to be? Again, I think this is a player that you like to put in those stacks. You like to put in those You like to put in those bunch formations offensively, where you put multiple guys, whether you put them on a line, put them in the back, whatever you're doing there. Have him work underneath zone. I love him for jet sweeps. I love him for screens. Lions ran a lot of screens last year because if they're going to play off coverage, if they're going to try to back up, let's give him a little bit of space. Throw that screen to him, right? Run him on a jet sweep. Let him get the ball and go, because he's going to fight for extra yards. He's going to bounce outside. He's very natural with the ball in his hands. You see the ability to kind of tuck, like, oh, I'll put it in my left hand, put it in my right hand. Very natural as a runner. Very, very natural as a runner. And that's a huge element to his game, and it should be utilized. And I don't know how many times you want to rush the football with him, but it's definitely a part of his game. You can keep it as simple as the Detroit Lions wanted and needed more playmakers offensively. I think James Mitchell also fits this category. Of course, they went out and got a guy like DJ Chark. But these guys where it's not, hey, I throw the ball 5 yards, we're getting 5 yards on this play. No, I throw the ball 5 yards, we might have just picked up 13 or more yards on this play. I don't know why 13 just popped in my head. But the ability to take the ball, make something happen with the ball in their hands, do extra. We saw St. Brown show that ability last season. It's like a video game watching him. I mean, even going back to high school, you're just like, what the heck? He's just so natural. He's so shifty. He is a very big problem. I thought the most, I don't know if like competitive is the right word, or, most powerful he looked was with the ball in his hands running. I mean, he looked very tough to break down when the ball was in his hand. He's not a guy, and Ben Johnson said he's going to be utilized a lot on the outside, which makes sense. I think you look at his route tree, it could be expanded upon. I think a lot of routes we asked our outside receivers to do, he could easily run. You saw some DJ Chark type of routes that he ran. Obviously, the corner routes that they ran with Josh Reynolds, those timing, the dig routes, he can run all of those, no problem. Like, he's got those, no problem. So he can handle all of the outside routes. I've seen our guys be tasked with running. I'm sure there'll be a little bit added to that. So I think the route tree has potential to grow, but definitely fit what the Lions are looking for, with possibility to slide into the slot, as Ben Johnson said, because he knows how much speed and slot can be dangerous for defenses depending on what the defense is showing and what they're doing defensively based on matchups there. But he's definitely not a 50-50 guy. Want to make that clear if we have it. He only had 4 contested catches. Safety jumping down on an underneath route, or it was very tight coverage on a quick hitting slant, whatever it was, there really wasn't a lot of 50-50 grabs, and that makes a ton of sense. This wasn't a guy that they threw like any of those passes to, where it was like, all right, I'm in trouble, I'm throwing it up to him, he's going to go up and get it. He's not that type of receiver. That kind of receiver we saw with the last, regime, with the last group we had, the Marvin Jones, the Kenny Galladays. This is more of the get separation, get open. And we started talking about this last year with the Perrimans and the Tyrells, guys like that coming in. This guy takes to a whole other level. He is almost always open, especially once he starts to work some of those longer routes. It's just like, yeah, he's going to get open. It's just as simple. He's going to get open. If you give him a long enough route, he's going to get open deep. So if you can pass protect, you're going to have a shot to him. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. And if it's not, someone else is going to be open, because that's the kind of attention that he gets. But he could probably improve in terms of contested situations. They just really didn't throw those passes towards him. Again, like I said, I think he could work at some of his situational underthrows down the field in terms of ball tracking. That way he could probably improve in some of those areas. But overall, that's not the type of receiver he is. This is something that you see a lot of these guys, with this great movement skills, then the big issue usually with this big much of speed and change of pace and the acceleration. I mean, first off, you just don't find that many receivers anyways. I don't know if I've seen another in this year's class that's as explosive and dynamic in terms of changing speeds as he is. But then you combine that with the fact that he really doesn't drop passes that often either. With that said, I don't know if right now he's immediately the most consistent winner one-on-one, be the possession receiver. You may take some lumps early on, and again, with the timing and stuff like that as well. So for me, he'd probably come in, if he is healthy, let's say he's healthy week 1, offseason went well, he'd probably come in as a 2. I mean, I would think DJ Chark's the 1. You rely on him. He already looks like a very good possession receiver. He wins one-on-ones. You trust where he's going to be. Josh Reynolds will probably back that up. And then on the opposite side, he put Jameson. So he's out there a lot. He stretches the field. He forces you over top, and he can win underneath as well. You can give him the ball, and he's dangerous with the ball in his hands. He's competitive, but he just needs to be maybe a little more consistent in certain areas to be that number 1, and which could eventually be the case with him. This is no question a top 10 talent to clean up them things, but a top 10 talent that had an injury that bumped him down. I mean, that's all it seems like here. Is a third receiver taken, but my goodness. I mean, Chris Olave, fantastic route runner, but he's not explosive like this. You know, and if the doctors are right what they're saying, oh my goodness. I'm just saying, oh my goodness. Okay, I really like Garrett Wilson, but come on, man. Like, hey, got good play strength, but no. This is unreal explosiveness and game-changing ability, which, yes, will dictate coverage and should be good for a couple shots a game. Even within the first 5 yards he's gone, you can just throw it up there and try to drop in the bucket. And that's something Goff is very, very good at coming out of Cal. So, you know, I expect that to be kind of his role immediately with the Lions that eventually will probably become, you know, the guy within this offense. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.